Well, you know, it's been a really interesting, a really fascinating time for Italian brand Beta when you look back over the last sort of 5 or 6 years. But, you know, in my mind, in particular, the last sort of 3 years, you know, you look at where they've, you know, where they've come from. I say 5 or 6 years ago, that's when they started winning world championships and world Enduro championships with Brad Freeman and Steve Holcomb, and have continued to do so since. But I think in 2020, you know, they released those all 8 new models, like all new 2-strokes, all new 4-strokes, completely from ground up, and they were world-class machines, you know. So, you know, but then they did refinements in 21, they did refinements in 22, and so I think, you know, for 23, a lot going on in the world, supply problems, you know, relatively small company, you would have forgiven Beta for going, like, okay, we've made some pretty big advances in recent years, so let's just, you know, wheel out what we've got. But they haven't. For 2023, you know, the RR, or the standard models, you know, all red now to differentiate themselves from the RR Racing, the up-spec version. You know, they've done some pretty big changes to the ergos, sort of, until you actually have a look in terms of, you know, the way that the tank and the shroud sit together, which makes it even more seamless, the way that the sort of seat sits in here. There's less of a pocket, it's a really very easy to move around. They've done some pretty significant changes to the ZF suspension. ZF, you know, like in my understanding, is an evolution of Sachs, a high-end componentry. So on the fork, they've actually done, it's not just reshimmed, you know, not just new specs, they've actually changed the oil flow and the internals completely. So that's been done across the entire range. What we're sitting here is the biggest selling 4-stroke in the range, the RR390. An amazing machine and always a very popular one on a launch. But across the board in the 4-strokes, what are we seeing? So the traction control, they've always had this, you know, this dual map arrangement here, kind of cool, not cluttering up the bars, sitting here, fine. But they've the traction control, which came in on the racing models last year, that's been adopted by the RR models this year. Also, really, you can actually see the size of the header, in particular on the 390. The headers are much bigger, you know, just extracting more torque, bottom end, smoothness out of it, and then big change in the engine mapping to suit that. So I think from a design philosophy point of view, you read what all the engineers and designers are saying from Beta this year, and it's all about taking an already competitive package and making it more rideable, more user-friendly. And I think probably there could be no better example of that than, you know, than this 390, and it's exactly why, you know, at 14.5 grand, it is the biggest seller, very competitively priced in the market. So it's the biggest seller, biggest 4-stroke seller for Beta. So it's an interesting story, this bike actually. The guys from Lowry, Australia, who since, you know, 2020, you know, have been the distributors based up in Queensland. So, you know, we had a chat to those guys, said, hey, we'd love to get one of these as a project bike, because performance is one thing, but actually living with the bike, you know, as if you're replicating that ownership experience is pretty important as well. So, mate of mine, Geoff Ballard, said, oh mate, I'm going up to Queensland, and you know, he's actually had some Beta cross trainers, you know, for the last few years. He goes, I'll grab it for you. And I'm like, great, awesome, man. Which he did, and he came back, and then got pretty difficult making arrangements to pick it up off him. So I sort of started getting the impression that he really liked it. And sure enough, I was hearing stories from other people. He was riding it a lot. And, but no, I want to call him in because he's nearby. GB, swing on in, mate. And as he rocks over to sort of tell us a bit about his experience, because he put about 8 hours in the bloody thing. It was.
I got to give it back, don't I?
Yeah, that's right.
That's the problem.
It's finally time, mate. So I had my first ride on it today, but look, Jeff's, he said to me over the phone, I want to say the first time he said, mate, I love this thing. It's one of the best, if not the best bikes you've actually got out of the crate. And you're not one to sort of dole out praise lightly. And when you said that to me, I'm like, shit, I knew you liked it a few years ago. I knew they've done some advancements with the suspension and motor this year, but was that a surprise to you?
Well, yeah, it was. You know, you're the techo guy, so you know all of he reads all the brochures, this guy, and he knows all that stuff. I'm just the bloke who goes, unreal, got a new bike, there's a few changes, let's go. We'll talk about the 2-stroke later. Jumped on this thing, and it wasn't mine, it was his, but you know, he'll get it eventually. Anyway, I really did love it, and yeah, that statement is true. Yeah, I really think it's one of the best, if not the best, bikes I've ever ridden, and it's. I'm trying to decipher what actually is the outstanding thing, and there's a lot of balance in this bike. The brakes are unreal, and the chassis, and the steering, and the suspension. I actually rate it's great, and but I think the motor is the biggest thing, and you know, I hear him saying, yeah, it's got more bottom end and everything, and and I'm used to a 350 Kato, and I had, you know, Yamaha, the really powerful 450s, and I ride my mate's 450s. I ride everything I can get a ride on. And I have a problem because I'm getting weaker as I get older, and I jump on a 450 and it just feels so heavy, and I just go, nah, I'm just not going to do it, I'm not going to do it. And there's chalk and cheese between the 350s type of thing and the 450s, but this bike is really amazing that way. It's got, I believe it's even got more torque right on the bottom than the 450 Kato, let's say, and it's definitely got a lot more than 350, but I've ridden the 450 a fair bit, and this bike's unreal down low. It's amazing. It really makes it easy to ride.
It just help you position the bike. I know that you were saying, you talked about stability, and I know a lot of the snotty stuff you do in the pines, it's side to side, and having balance and being able to control the bike and pick them up in ruts.
Yeah.
The power's really good for that, huh?
It saves you. It's amazing. It's really, really good. It doesn't feel heavy. Okay, it is, I don't know what the weight is, but it doesn't really feel heavy, so that's the main thing. The power saves you more than, you know, it really is an amazing part of this whole combo. But yeah, everything else does work really well in harmony. And can we talk about the suspension?
Let's, because, you know, I remember last time, 2 years ago, we tested, I think, 200 two-stroke and 390 four-stroke, both bigger sellers than respective 2 and 4-stroke. And you didn't like the suspension morning, it bedded in, and you're like, oh shit, I like it now. But you're still sort of out to lunch a little bit about the shock. But now, you know,
well, I got this bike brand new. He never got it, obviously, and I had it for a while. And I actually motoed it first, and I loved it. I thought it was great, and I thought it was the way it should be delivered, because it's not a motocross bike, but we all end up doing a few laps of moto sort of conditions or situations and stuff like that. So it was unreal on that track, and it bottomed a few times. Yeah, so it did bottom, but it's got a headlight. I expect it to bottom on a motocross track, you know, if it's...
But not like break your wrist bottom, just...
No, it was very controlled, and I thought, oh, that's good. I had no issues at all. Ran it completely stock for quite a while. I've done quite a bit of riding. We're on our second tyre now. Then I went into the pines, and the thing is so planted, and you know, it's amazing. The first time I rode it in the pines, I was like shaking my head going, geez, it's so good, and I know the track really well, so I could push, and I just knew it. I just felt so comfortable. I could do lots of laps, and I didn't lose my balance and things that, you know, I've had trouble with on some other bikes. So yeah, I just really enjoyed it, and I didn't want to give it back to you, basically. That was it.
Well, you're going to Vietnam in a couple of days, mate, so somebody might as well take advantage of it while you're away. So, look, I think it's got about 8 hours on the thing now. So, GB, we mucked around a little bit in the workshop this morning and sort of had a look at a few things with the air filter. I noticed that air filter maintenance program has been a little bit off the pace, mate. But
that's pretty good for me.
You've ridden it a fair bit. Just give us an idea of the variety of stuff you've ridden in, the snotty stuff.
Yeah.
You've raced it at the
I've raced it at different moto tracks, you know, Queensland Motor Park and this one here, and I've ridden in technical tracks here, which Jess Gardner calls Finland, so it's really rocky and roots and ruts and things. It's typical for us here in Hampton area. And I've ridden the Transmoto 8 hour in Stroud, yep. And had a lot of square edge. I had one of the team guys come in and go, oh my God, the square edges are killing me. And I really had confidence that this thing's going to be good, and it was fantastic. So I think they've done an amazing job. I know they've changed it because I've ridden them before. It's the best they've ever developed. Yeah, suspension's pretty impressive. It's is it ZT? Is it called ZT?
ZF.
ZF. Yeah. So ZF. I know it's a German company. It's a pretty big company. They're on the rise as far as I'm concerned, especially after riding this thing. So, you know, I think they've done a lot of improvements. It's pretty bloody good. I think it's a great presentation from them to start as this is my bike, you know, and if you want it a bit stiffer, you can control things. It's got preload here, it's got, you know, you don't need screwdrivers or anything to adjust the...
What did we work out? 9 turns of preload, which is just literally...
yeah, it comes on a 0.
Yeah.
But I rode it a lot with it in standard, and honestly, it's like if, you know, for instance, I'm planning on riding one of these now in the 4-day, and if it just gets to the point where you're just getting fatigued, you know, the suspension that may be a bit soft, or people think it's a bit soft because somebody else will say it, but it's really going to suit a big part of the riding community, you know. So if you were getting fatigued, you just back it off, like at the dusty, kind of hard to see a bit, hanging on, hitting the square edges that we had a bit at Stroud. It was just like an armchair. It was awesome. I had no trouble at all with it. It was great.
Well, I think you kind of mentioned it. The two things, I've only ridden it for a couple of hours today, and obviously I've ridden previous 390s, but the big things that jumped out at me is the motor, super refined, super torquey for something.
Yeah.
It reminded me, I think I said to you, of a KTM 400. Remember that thing was so
Yes,
popular when they superseded it with a 450. I want to say that the UK and some of the European countries actually hung on to the 400, it was that popular. So for me, just in some of those ruts, using it, having the instantaneous nature of it, but it coming on not hard, but it was there instantaneously, that was a huge thing. And the other thing, suspension. I didn't know, I'm probably a little heavier than you, so, but I'm not riding as fast. So, some people, is it soft? But no, it's just plush. And I think over some of that root stuff, what you're calling Finland out there with the rocks and roots, that's where it comes into its absolute own. I did find on the moto track a little bit flighty, I guess, probably a little bit reboundy. Haven't even had a chance to muck around and dial down some rebound damping yet. But,
it's not far wrong at all. It's pretty bloody good. I rate it. I definitely rate it. I could, honestly, if somebody said, hey, we've sent a box over there and you can pull it out of the box and ride the 4-day, no problem at all. Absolutely no problem at all. I feel really comfortable and straight off the bat.
Funny you say that, because the last time I tried to get it back up here at our 8-hour event, you're like, yeah, I actually just about that. I've got some plans to ride the 4-day over in WA in a month or two. So in the meantime, you talk to Lowry guys and you've sorted that out, right?
I think so. That's my hope, because I want to ride one of these now.
But you're going to ride, I believe, a racing version.
Yeah,
of these
maybe.
With some kind of
I think so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. So that'd be cool. But they're a bloody good bike. Yeah, they're balanced incredibly well, and I don't know, they've done a good job of this thing. It's awesome.
We know how to take the air filter in and out, mate. I've seen you do that, but I haven't seen you clean it yet. But I'm up for an oil change, an air filter change. But anything from a living with accessibility maintenance point of view that you've kind of noticed?
Not really. No, nothing's been difficult to work on. Not as if I've worked on it that much, because what do? Don't change the tyre. I just have changed an air filter or two maybe, but everything's easy. It's an easy bike just to jump on and go. And then if you're a real heavy guy, or you're super fast, you may find you can't get what you want through the clickers. Then you can do other things. But honestly, I'm not trying to get them out of this thing. This is the way most bikes should come. A lot of bikes, I think, might come too harsh or whatever. This thing's stable. It's got plenty of good shit going on for it. Yeah, it's beauty.
It's pretty clear that it comes with a positive rap sheet from GB. So look, I'm really looking forward to living with this thing. It's not the kind of thing like, what's my first mods that I'm going to put on the thing, because it's they are sort of, they're race ready.
Yeah, they are.
It'll be interesting playing around with the suspension, but I'm just really looking forward to living with it over the next little while and just sort of, just really coming to terms. And it's like when you clean the thing, when you get in there and actually work on the thing, you get a better idea of how it's all put together. But, I think my experience with these things in the past, and there's a lot of clever little ideas on them. There's been very little or no corner cutting when it comes to, design. It's obviously paying dividends now, and everything from world championships to production bikes for, for the average punter.
Yeah, great all-rounder. Bloody love this thing. It's beauty.
Well, if you do ride it in the 4-day, or the upspeed version of it, mate, get amongst it.
That's a plan.
You riding for America or Queensland?
Queensland. Yeah, I'm all over the shop.